Hello, this is Brian. Today is Friday, October 21st, 2022, and I am here at the wonderful Crestridge Ecological Reserve near Harbison Canyon, Crest, and El Cajon here in San Diego County. Today I want to provide a spotlight on shrubs video, on a spotlight I have been meaning to do for a very long time. It's about a plant I point out quite often when I come across it. So let's get right into it today. Today's spotlight is on Broom Baccharis, also known as Desert Broom. And it is this shrub here, Baccharis sarothroides. The Broom Baccharis is a semi-evergreen to drought-deciduous shrub. In other words, during the driest times of year, some to most of the leaves are going to fall off of this plant in the dry summer season, and it is a member of the sunflower family, the Asteraceae. So Broom Baccharis is a plant that you're going to find a lot in disturbed and open areas, anywhere like places that have been excavated, disturbed by fire, disturbed by construction, disturbed by the building of trails, by the scouring out by floodwaters. So it's a plant that very highly colonizes disturbed areas. As you can see here, there's a lot of white on these shrubs. We are looking at the flowers, or the flower heads. Sunflower family, they're flower heads, they're composite flowers. So Broom Baccharis can have quite a different array of statures. As you can see here, some of them kind of have very irregular shapes, kind of all over the place, like these ones, quite irregular shaped. But a lot of the younger Broom Baccharis plants are very upright as well. So they can be very upright, and then when they get much older and much larger, and these shrubs can get very tall. This one here is probably about 9 feet tall. A lot of times you'll see them a bit smaller, but those are in areas that are repeatedly disturbed and scoured out by mechanical means or natural means. So when they're able to persist in an area, they can persist for quite a while and form very tall, sometimes monotypic stands of shrubs. So you can see this area has had some disturbance due to the construction and maintenance of trails. So you'll notice that here. A lot of times they're going to start off relatively upright, as you can see here, and then they are known to grow very quickly into some very tall, lanky shrubs that with age can be quite irregular. So let's go start looking in on some of the details of these plants. Now, I'm going to be kind of careful because the bees are swarming around them like crazy. And I'm going to tell you something about the flowers. As you see, the flowers on these look different, flower heads, I correct myself, than the flower heads on these. And I'll explain that in a minute. But let's go look at some of the other structural pieces of this shrub. So, as you see here, it looks like just a bundle of sticks. Very finely arranged sticks. And that's another reason why they call this plant Broom Baccharis, or Desert Broom, because of its broom-like structure, especially when it's younger and more upright. So this plant doesn't seem to have a lot of leaves on it. But you're looking at it thinking it's very green. What are you talking about? Well, the leaves on these plants are very small and variable in size and slightly variable in shape. But for the most part on Broom Baccharis, The leaves are narrow, as you can see here, and the leaves on the side of the twigs are very narrow and very linear and alternately arranged. So these right here are the leaves, very small and linear. And you can see the shrub is not very highly loaded with leaves, and that's because these shrubs are at least semi-drought deciduous. So why is it still so green if it's not very leafy? Well, it's because of the twigs. The twigs on a lot of our Baccharis species, and also includes the other Baccharis species we have, like coyote brush, Baccharis piloraris, Baccharis salicina, the willow Baccharis, and those are the ones that sometimes are found in drier locations. They also have green twigs as well because the twigs can photosynthesize in the absence of a lot of leaves. So if the shrub sheds a lot of its leaves, it can still photosynthesize and produce fruit without the expensive energy use of making leaves. So the shrub can shed its leaves and still synthesize, so it can have the best of both worlds. It can still make energy and still conserve it, especially in these dry climates. Now, I've mentioned that these plants are very common in dry or disturbed sites. Well, they're common from coast into the deserts. Now, here in Southern California, Broom Baccharis is much more common in San Diego County than it is in Orange and Riverside counties and northward. It is starting to expand its range northward. I have seen it a couple times near the 91 freeway, near the northern base of the Santa Ana Mountains and the Santa Ana Canyon and river drainage. So it is spreading naturally, and it is much more common here in San Diego County, especially central and southern San Diego County, than it is in northern San Diego County. Up that way, it's more readily replaced by coyote brush, with which Broom Baccharis grows, and can be confused with. See, Broom Baccharis, again, generally has quite narrow leaves. Some of the younger shoots can have some slightly broader leaves on them, and that's pretty typical in Asteraceae shrubs, sunflower family shrubs, that some of the leaves on younger branches and stems can be wider and bigger, more vigorous. So here's a young Broom Baccharis sapling right here, and if you look carefully, you can see that the leaves are a little bit larger, a little bit more noticeable, and that's quite typical on younger branches and younger plants. So they do kind of have a juvenile foliage and an adult foliage, like a lot of other plants. Juvenile foliage tends to be wider, thicker, and adult foliage tends to be thinner and smaller. And this being in the shade of this larger Broom Baccharis shrub, you can tell that it is more shaded, so it doesn't dry up quite as much. So it still has quite a few of its leaves on it. Broom Baccharis is a very easy to grow plant. It's an adaptation for this plant to be able to spread in disturbed areas. This plant seeds like crazy. The seeds blow off like crazy, and they germinate like crazy. Very easy plant to grow. If you grab a tuft of seeds and you grab a bunch of tufts of seeds, put them in the dirt, give them about a week or two, and they will start sprouting like crazy. Broom Baccharis is very easy to grow. Very tolerant of dry, heat. Cold tolerance, I don't think it's quite as tolerant. It's a very low elevation growing shrub, and it grows from near the coast to desert. So you will find this in the inland deserts as well, especially in canyon washes and on roadsides. I believe this plant goes as far as at least Arizona, I believe. I'll post the more comprehensive range of this plant on the screen. But it does grow here in the southwestern deserts, and it is quite rampant. So some people might think it's a weed. meaning they're thinking it's some kind of invasive plant. Well, a lot of times this plant uses its high rate of reproduction to become a competitive advantage, and it's proliferating. So now we're going to start talking about the flowers and the fruits of these plants. Now, one term to describe Broom Baccharis is dioecious. And what dioecious means, it's Greek, meaning two, dioecious, homes. So it means two homes in Greek. So what that means is each sex of the flowers is on separate plants. So the male flowers are on one plant, female flowers are on another plant. That's what dioecious means. So some shrubs have male flowers or flower heads, and some shrubs have female flowers or flower heads. And of course, since this is Asteraceae, sunflower family, these are composite flower heads. So the male flower heads on Broom Baccharis look like these. They kind of look like balls of stamens, little tiny balls of stamens. These are discoid flowers or flower heads. So these are composed of several tiny discoid miniature flowers. So each one of these balls right here, like this, is a flower head. This I'm touching is a flower head. This is just a cluster of flower heads. And they're formed at the tips of the branches, usually towards anywhere from August, sometimes well into November and December. I would say its heaviest flowering period would be in fall, mostly October and November. So this is the these are the staminate flower heads. So these are the male flower heads of the Broom Baccharis. So you can see these honeybees here, these Apis mellifera, these honeybees are here gathering the nectar and pollen from the male flowers, or flower heads again. So let's go see what a female Broom Baccharis shrub looks like. The flower heads are quite a bit different on the pistillate, in other words, the female flower heads. So the female flower heads on the Broom Baccharis kind of look like little tufts. These are what eventually will become the tufted seeds, or the pappus. So you can see here, the female ones are narrower, and they have a little brush-like bit here on the tip. Those will become the pappus for the seeds. So what happens is these will get pollinated and turn into the seed heads. So the seeds will be forming here on the female Broom Baccharis. And then, when they ripen, let's try to see if I can get a good picture of this. They'll become these tufted seed heads. This already has a few on it. When they're ripened. And these things will separate into many little seeds and blow away in the wind. So, if you ever hear the term dioecious when speaking about botany, Greek for two homes. One home for male flowers, which the home is a shrub, and one home for female flowers, which is a totally different shrub. So we got staminate and pistillate. So some other structures like the Broom Baccharis, we really didn't get a good look at the bark and the stems. So being a really rampant wild growing shrub like this means it's going to have lots of stems and trunks, and like I said, the upper twigs are green, so photosynthesis can take place in the absence of a lot of leaves. But as you move down, the twigs turn into grayish bark as you move down the stems, and on very old specimens, the bark can be furrowed, which is actually quite common in the genus Baccharis. You'll see that a lot in older Baccharis plants. So eventually the bark will get more furrowed with age. As you can see here, that is the base of a Broom Baccharis mature trunk right there. So gray and furrowed with maturity. And occasionally these things can get up to over 10 feet tall. And they can have trunks that are like 5-6 inches wide on very mature specimens. A good place to see some of those would be in Tecolote Canyon in San Diego. There are some very old growth Broom Baccharis plants there that are very tall. And again, wherever you're going to have canyons, here I want to show you a more comprehensive look at what the seed heads look like, because I see one here that's producing a lot of seed heads. I could show you that really quickly. Now, I told you that the female flower heads turn into the seed heads. So again, those are what the female flower heads look like. Female flower heads. This is what the seed heads look like at maturity. They blow away in the wind like dandelion seeds. And again, very easy shrubs to germinate from seed. It's their adaptation to proliferate in disturbed sites, and sometimes reclaim areas for native plants, as opposed to allowing invasives to take over. So there you have it. I've been pointing this shrub out a lot on my hikes in San Diego County, but I figured it was time to do a good spotlight video on this really interesting shrub. So there you have it. Baccharis sarothroides, the Broom Baccharis, from here in Crestridge Ecological Reserve near El Cajon. That was Spotlight on Shrubs with Brian. I hope you found this video helpful in identifying more of our awesome flora here in Southern California. Just adding another piece to the awesome puzzle that is our native plant communities. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next Spotlight video.